This book will be memorable to me, not for the plot or the characters, but for the idea that it brought to life on the page. Welcome back to Paper Pages and Possibilities. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm excited to bring you this book. There was one aspect of it that I absolutely loved, and that's what I want to share with you. But I'll share about the whole book. So the book is called Words in Deep Blue by Cath Crowley. The premise of this story is we have a young woman who I think is about 18-ish, 17, 18, and she has just recently dealt with the loss of her brother. Her brother was taken from her when the family was out at the beach, and the brother disappeared. Ended up he had drowned in the ocean. We kind of see glimpses of this throughout the story, but where we start is with the main female character, Rachel. She is going to her aunt's house in the town where she grew up in to get away from the town where her brother's death is all over the news and people are just, bugging her and checking on her, and she needs a little bit of peace and ability to grieve on her own. So she comes to her hometown, and it brings up not just the death of her brother, but it also brings up new challenges, such as before she left 3 years earlier, she had left a note in a book for someone that she was in love with, and admitted her love to them, but that person didn't seem to respond like they'd even recognized it. That's kind of the beginning of the story, and we follow mostly Rachel, but we also follow the main male character, who is Henry. And Henry is the one that Rachel had written that letter to, confessing her love. These two were best friends growing up. It was like the last act that she did before she left town. But we kind of find out early on he did not get that letter for one reason or another. And so there's this barrier between the two of them. She thinks that he has seen the letter and just doesn't give a care. And he thinks that she just suddenly became distant and doesn't know why. So there's this, I wouldn't say miscommunication, but more of a missed communication or lost communication, something like that. Henry, on the other hand, is in a family of booksellers, in that his family owns a bookstore, and their house, or their living quarters, are above the bookstore. With Henry, he is currently in a relationship with someone who we don't really like. It's someone that we learn early on is not going to be a likable character. But Henry is, for some reason, completely smitten with her. He feels like she's the rest of his life. Like, he doesn't realize the bad fit that they are for each other. So we kind of follow this interaction between Henry and Rachel as they reunite, try to navigate that gap of information between each other. And it's forced because Rachel is given a job in the bookstore to kind of get back into the world, because we're nearing on a year since her brother had died. So that brings us, the bookstore is, to me, the best part about this book. The story was okay. It is a romance of sorts, and it's also about grief. But for me, the absolute best part was this concept that the author created in this bookstore. So, in this bookstore, there is a particular shelf that has books that are not for sale. And this bookshelf has become well known in the community and well used in the community. This bookshelf is called the Letter Library for a couple different reasons. So these books are not for sale, but people can come into the store and peruse these books, and they can annotate. So if they want to underline a passage that really means something to them, if they want to even write something in it about their thoughts regarding the quotes. And beyond that, it even goes so far as to foster communication between people in the community. So people start writing notes to each other in the pages of these books, and you see some romances develop. You see some people talking to lost loved ones, like using the book as a way of talking to their lost loved one. People also not just leave notes on the pages of the book themselves, but people will also leave letters in between the pages of the book. So that's how it became the letter library, is people were communicating with each other through the pages of the book. And I thought that was just such a beautiful idea. And that idea right there makes me want to own a bookstore and recreate that. Like, if I ever get the chance to own a bookstore, that is definitely happening. And just the thought of fostering a different way of communicating that kind of harkens back to, you know, before the age of the internet, before telephones, when letter writing was the main method of communication. It really, like, when you write versus text or call, it makes you be more thoughtful about the words that you're using. So I think there's a lot more introspection in letter writing versus text or phone calls. Not saying for everything, but I think it has a tendency to allow for more deep thoughts. So that made the book for me. If it hadn't had that specific aspect, I probably would have rated this a little bit lower. But that book, like I talked about earlier this year about what I'm deciding to do with my bookshelves. I'm only going to keep 5 stars or books that have some meaning to me. And this book is not a 5-star, but I find that concept so meaningful and something that I want to remember to potentially put into action sometime in the future. This is staying on my shelf just for that alone. So I wanted to share that with you. If you have heard of this book, I would love to hear your thoughts on it as well. This is taking place actually in Australia, and I believe the author is also Australian. So that was really an interesting take as well. You kind of saw a little bit of the Australian culture, which is a lot of similarities to American culture, but it's got a different vibe. So I found that interesting as well. And it's prompted an idea I think I'm going to work toward. I haven't set it in stone yet, but it's created a goal where I do want to read a book that either was written in or is takes place in every country in the world. So it's kind of a lofty goal. I know there's hundreds of countries, but it makes me want to really explore other people's experiences. And the American experience is all I know for the most part. And I think reading books that take place in other countries or written by people who live in other countries, I think that would really give me a deeper perspective of worldviews than if I were to like take a class on world history or something like that. Like I want to get more of the, I guess, the cultural feel and just really dig deep. So I'm blabbering on at this point, but I wanted to share this book with you, and I don't necessarily recommend the book, but the idea by itself, like if you are a bookstore owner and like the idea, I would love to see something like that in your bookstore. If you do, if this happens to reach any booksellers or bookstore owners and you decide to do that, please let me know. I would be absolutely enamored and would try to make my way to that bookstore wherever it is in the country, if it's in the US, and try to visit that at some point in my life. I can't say when, but I would make it a point, make it a bucket list item to visit that. Those are my thoughts. I appreciate you sticking around to the end if you did. And if you enjoy this content, enjoy book reviews and all sorts of bookish conversation, feel free to subscribe. And if you know any friends who are interested, feel free to share. I'm always looking to add people to this beautiful bookish community. That is it for now. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.